Well, welcome everybody. We're going to get started here in just a moment. So those of you who are in the room, give you 30 seconds to kind of get comfortable. Those of you who are online and in the room, I would encourage you to join the Kahoot this month, even if you traditionally have not. The last question on this Kahoot is going to be, I've put it on there with the intentions of it collecting survey information for me. And so I would really like to have as many of the assessment directors as possible be able to respond to the last question that's on this survey regarding 8th grade math. So again, that last question will be a survey-oriented question. All the responses will be given credit on that one for being correct. But I encourage you to join the Kahoot today so we can get your input on that issue.
Very low, and I'm thinking.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking your time to join with us today. I was not available to attend last month, so I've been looking forward to being back together with assessment directors in May. We're, as you know, in your schools, this is probably a pretty stressful time as assessment is well underway or wrapping up. I think Washington County either finished or is finishing this week. I think they're the first LEA in the state to wrap up their testing, but it's always additional stress as we put everybody through assessment across the state. Looks like we've got quite a few of you on the Kahoot. For my slides today, I've got about 20 questions on the Kahoot, so instead of using PowerPoint slides, I'm going to use this guide, these quiz questions as a guide for our discussion. So at any time during the quiz, both online and in person, if we ask a question and on the Kahoot quiz and you want to have some discussion about that, certainly raise that to our attention. And there'll be some things that I'll pull out, some questions that I put on here that are designed to have discussion around them. Okay, Emily, can you go ahead and get us started? 21 questions. What's that? So one of the questions, we're seeing some feedback that in the field there might be audio problems. In our test environment, we're hearing audio fine, and we wonder if it's volume related to your device-specific volume. If that's not the case, if there's others out there can give us input, that would be good. So the new 3CAT assessment system will include benchmark interims, including writing. The answer to that is yes, so the majority of you responded correctly to that. This has been an issue that is a little confusing, and again, part of it is because we haven't had an official media release, a full-blown media release about the assessment system. As you know, we've been working with a communications company and our public relations people within this building to prepare that. We expect that on June 7th, when the board signs the contract for our 9-10 high school assessment, that following that we'll have a widespread campaign where we'll release the name of the assessment. We'll talk more about that as well. But it's important, I think, for our field to know that we've tried to maintain those productivity tools for our teachers and benchmark and interim assessments as we've had in the past. The benchmark assessments have become, from our perspective, have become pretty popular and used with quite a bit of fidelity across the state. So make sure that your curriculum folks know those will continue to be available. Yes. So the statement here was not until October. So yeah, as we transition to a new vendor, the timeline that Jared talks about will show when those start. But moving forward, those will be available year round. Okay, the question was, will the writing be included beyond or outside of the 5th and 8th grade? Because we have those in our system already, And because it's part of the core curriculum to teach writing in all grades, we will continue to offer those in all grades, 3 through 8, the writing, benchmark, and interims. That's a great question. Okay, let's go on to our next one. The new 3.8 CAT summative assessments will continue to be course-based as opposed to end-of-year based or grade level based. Wouldn't surprise me if there's some confusion on this. It looks like the majority of you have this clearly understood in your minds, but we will continue to deliver those tests based on the courses the students are enrolled in, the same way that we have with the SAGE system. And the reason this can be confusing is when we start to talk about the 9th and 10th grade tests, you'll see there's a difference in how those will be delivered. So, okay, let's go on to our next question. The new high school assessment will be ACT Aspire, ACT, Utah Aspire Plus, or the SAT. Okay, and again, I'm not surprised there's some confusion on this because again, we've intentionally not made a public announcement because our board has not signed the contract. In fact, later this afternoon, we have an additional contract meeting with Pearson and our financial office, financial operations, and we hope to again have that prepared and ready for release formally in a public announcement on June 7th. But the test is the Utah Aspire Plus. ACT Aspire, maybe 2 years ago there was talk about Utah adopting the ACT Aspire. I see language as I've come into this office and look at historical documents. It looks like that was a path that Utah was headed on at some point in the recent past. But the Utah Aspire Plus is a hybrid version of that, and we'll talk more about that. Last month we gave you a document in the AD materials to help you explain what we could about that to your stakeholders, and hopefully that was valuable. Okay. Will the Utah Aspire Plus be delivered as an end of course or end of year test? Again, the confusion, I take responsibility for this because again, we have not talked about this a lot, but it will be an end of year test. So that's a change versus our 9th and 10th grade students they're testing this year where it's tied to a course. This will be an end of year test for all 9th graders and all 10th grade students. Now, the leaderboard isn't changing much there. Will the Utah Aspire Plus be specific for each grade? Meaning, will the 9th and 10th grade tests be different from one another, or will they be the same test? It's correct. They will be specific for each grade as part of this hybrid, as part of the value of the hybrid solution that we have, where the ACT Aspire is similar content for both the 9th and 10th grade. We'll be doing a crosswalk with our core standards and our items that we have in our 9th and 10th grade item bank with ACT's items that they've developed for the Aspire, and each of those tests will be unique for their grade. Yes. Okay, so the question that's come up is what about science? And that's a great question. I don't have a definitive answers. We've talked to Pearson. How we're going to have to work that is in the blueprint design. So ACT's science standards that they assess are pretty broad. We, in assessment, want to make sure that we're not driving curriculum, and so we know that there's not a 9th grade or 10th grade science course in Utah. In fact, when we ran the numbers, about just under half of our students are enrolled in Earth Systems in 9th grade. The other just under half are enrolled in biology, and then there's a chunk, that small chunk in the middle that are physics with technology. So trying to identify what our 9th grade science is, and the same is true for math slightly, not as big a gap as you see with science, is work that we'll have to do as we bring in our teacher teams for alignment. But we'll be sensitive to that. We don't want instructional focus or curriculum decisions to be made based on assessment. Assessment should support curriculum. So philosophically, that's where we're at. What that's going to look like, and we're still working that out. Okay, so the online question is Utah Aspire Plus an end-of-year test? That's correct, end-of-year test. Yeah, we're ready. Oh, we have a change on the leaderboard now. The Utah Aspire Plus will be a time test. True or false? Wow, not much confusion there. It will be a time test. The test will be able to be delivered in either a battery, so where you take all 4 subtests in one sitting, like the ACT, or you'll be able to spread those out. That'll be an LEA decision of how you do that, but each subtest will have a time for it. We're working with ACT and Pearson to determine what those are. It'll look very similar to the time thresholds that are associated with the Aspire. One of the reasons that it'll be timed is the scoring committee for our RFP for the high school assessment had a strong flavor for preparing our students for the ACT with this assessment. They expressed concerns that most of our students don't experience a time test until the ACT, which can sometimes be a stumbling block for them if they don't know how to manage their time through the assessment. And so that's the rationale behind why it will be a timed assessment moving forward for our 9th and 10th grade students. Yes. Within your LEA, so one school could do a block, and that's what we believe will be the case as we work. The part of that that's still a little bit undefined is the psychometric complications that can be, because we're still using this data in an accountability system. But as we've worked with Pearson and ACT, we've advocated that our schools be allowed as much flexibility as possible within the administration of this assessment. Okay. Utah Aspire Plus contains assessment items from which bank? The Utah Bank, ACT, Pearson, or Utah and ACT? I'm hopeful that there's not a lot of confusion on, but there could be. Great. The majority of you understand that this Aspire Plus is a hybrid version which will contain approximately 50% of the items will be out of the Utah Item Bank and continue to be developed by Utah teachers. And about 50% of the items come from ACT's Aspire Item Bank. Which of the following subtests will not be assessed in the Utah Aspire Plus? Math, science, writing, reading. Wonderful, writing. And so we've gone back and forth as a state on whether we assess writing in the 9th or 10th grade to the consternation of many people. As you know, we pulled writing out under board direction of 9th and 10th grade this year, added writing to ACT. The contract for Pearson with this hybrid version does not include writing for 9th and 10th. Utah Aspire Plus will include course-based benchmark interim assessments. Yes, no, it depends on costs and available funding. I had a special ed law class once, and the questions the teacher would always put, true, false, it depends. And it just aggravated me because I could think of an it depends for every possible scenario, but that wasn't true. Okay, so we are moving forward. It's our intent to continue to provide benchmark, at least in perhaps interims. Remember, interims are the full assessment. The benchmarks are the small sub-testlets. It's our intention, as we were working with Pearson on the contract, to continue to offer those as productivity tools so that our teachers don't realize a loss with the change of vendor. It's likely that we'll be able to offer the benchmarks. The interim use in the 9th and 10th grade isn't as high, but we're working on it really comes down to being a budget issue. Our hope is to make sure teachers don't experience a loss with changing vendors, but there are some cost constraints. Al? No, yeah, so that's a great question. Would it have national comparison? The benchmarks would be all Utah items, and so they would be tied to our core standards 100%, and they would be available in every high school, so all the way through secondary math 3, all 4 science contents, all the ELA. So they would be a teacher productivity tool to help your teachers be able to not have to write all their tests, to be able to use these to get feedback in a formal way. And the reports would be similar to what they receive now, the teachers who are using benchmarks. So the question was, would they be available for an end of year? If the interims are part of the contract in the end, I would imagine those could be delivered that way. The benchmarks, I don't know that we would use them that way, because they would be 10 to 20 questions per reporting category in the core, and probably would be used differently than that. Yes, they are course-based, or will be, assuming that we can get them into the contract, which is our focus. So the question is, do the curriculum directors know this development or this idea? I have not had a formal discussion with the curriculum, with Diana Sudreth about this. We're moving, our energy behind this is to, again, try to make sure that teachers don't experience a loss with the change of assessment vendors, even though, especially 9th and 10th grade, significantly different than what they've experienced, but try to keep as many of the tools that they are using at their disposal. Okay. An LEA's testing window can be as long as, so we're going to move away from our new assessment, just get into some general things we've talked about over the last couple of months. An LEA's testing window can be 4, 6, 8, or 10 weeks. Good, the majority of you got this correct. One of the reasons this is on here, and there's a couple other questions related to this, is our testing ethics policy, which includes some of these requirements, is going to go before the Standards and Assessment Committee in June, so that it can go through before the full board, hopefully in August, and be available to LEAs much earlier than it was last year for your training. So you maybe want to attend to that. If there's things that you would like to be considered in that policy that are not, we'll talk about another one here in a minute that I think we should start to look at. We're certainly open to feedback. The assessment accountability section, and then obviously the board as well. An LEA's testing plan is required to contain which elements? The dates the LEA will administer each test, professional development for implementing the assessments, professional development related to using the assessment data, all of the above. Wonderful. And there's some other elements there, but just wanted to have a reminder of that as you guys are creating your plans for this coming year. Is virtual proctoring of statewide assessments currently allowed under certain circumstances? So virtual proctoring of the SAGE, ACT, DIBELS, statewide assessments, is it allowed? Majority of you got this right, and I'm glad we put this question on there then, because it looks like there's some confusion. Under the current policy, the testing ethics policy, it indicates that it has to be proctored face-to-face. Now, my personal feeling is it might be time for us as a state to look at allowing a district or an LEA, especially our LEAs that have either all online delivery for their instructional programs, or some of you have segments of your students who receive curriculum through an online venue, to allow, if a district would want or an LEA would want to purchase. There are third-party vendors that can do proctoring securely, virtually. Universities use them. Other entities use those. There's a cost associated with those. But right now, even if you as an LA wanted to use those, it's prohibited. This is an area that, as we consider taking our testing ethics policy and making changes, that my personal feelings are it's time for us to look at making some changes to allow that to happen under circumstances that maintain the security of our test items. Because remembering our test items have significant value. Depending on the item, $4,000 to $6,000 per cost, cost per item. So Right now, though, you're right. Those of you who answered no, there's no circumstances that we can allow virtual proctoring on a statewide assessment. The 2019 date for the statewide ACT administration is, we don't know yet, February 20th, February 26th, March 5th. It is posted on our website. The majority of you got that right. One of the reasons I want to put this on here, I mean, it's not critical that you know that date right now off the top of your head, but that February 20th is earlier than I can recall us having in a while, and it's a different day of the week than what we've typically had. So that's the paper pencil, the statewide date. There's other dates associated with that. Rebecca published those at our last assessment directors meeting. And if there's questions about that, we can certainly help. But just to be aware of that as you plan for next year. The ACT can be administered online. Keyword there is can versus must. Great. Everybody knows that. There are, I can't remember, Rebecca, I think you published how many students participated online this spring. I think it was in the low thousands. About 4,000 students in this testing window this past spring participated in it online. So many of you in this room are listening online, were involved in that. And it's an option that you have moving forward if you have the capacity to deliver it that way. Utah Aspire Plus will be administered online. Correct. It will be. I didn't use the word must because we have certain students who will have accommodations that will allow them to have a paper pencil format of it. We'll talk more about this moving forward, but with the test, the way that we have this for the students who need Braille, this will be much easier to accommodate Braille tests moving forward than what the item adaptive test required to have happen for a student to have Braille. So this is an enhancement over what we've had in the past, the way that we'll be able to deliver Braille tests. DIBELS vendor applications are due May 1, June 15th, July 15th. Again, I don't think it's critical you know this off the top of your head, but just to have an awareness. The majority of you got that right. June 15th is the date that's due, and it's probably likely that many of you don't have that responsibility in your LEA, that it's someone else that might have to fill that out. Okay. Keep data. The spring data is due May 1, June 15th, July 1. The majority of you, again, got that right. I do want to apologize for, we've had some challenges, as many of you are aware, with getting data entered into the system. Our IT staff has been really responsive to our department and also curriculum, teaching and learning, and trying to resolve those. I mean, I appreciate your patience with us as we've worked through those problems. We think they're resolved now, and you're able to enter data. Okay, so the question is, we're hoping the data is flexible for year-round schools. Sydney, do you want to respond to that? So year-round schools, that date has June 30th, and Sydney, you've talked to those LEAs directly. Okay, great. The ELL screener for grades 1 and 2 it's the first year we had this new screener, the WAPT, WIDA screener, DIBELS. I would have missed this one, so I put it together from my days in ELL. The majority of you got that right, though. This year we introduced the WIDA screener, and we'll continue to use that test moving forward. Grades 9 and 10 untested ELA writing tests should be given which special code? So these are the students. Remember, we removed writing from 9th and 10th grade. And so that test still shows up because of the timing of it. What do we need to do with those students? Oh, great. No code is necessary. The vast majority of you got that correct. There have been a few questions that have come into our office. That's the reason I put that on there. Is there still a slight amount of confusion out there? You can just ignore those moving forward. Okay. Institutions of higher education will use which of a student's ACT composites for admissions? This one comes from a parent concern out of the Canyons district. I thought it would be important for us to talk about this as assessment directors in case you have similar concerns. The majority of you got that right. The universities will use the highest one they receive. This challenge or this question that came from a parent was, to me, felt unusual. We've been doing statewide ACT since 2012, 50,000 students a year. I've never had this concern rates. Maybe some of you had. The parent was concerned because their student was allowed to select which universities their ACT was going to without their involvement. And they were troubled because the ACT scores had been sent to 2 universities, both in state, and the parent was concerned that in some way that might damage their child's opportunities for scholarship and enrollment at the universities where those scores had been sent. And we talked, I think he had worked with Canyons. The Canyons have been very responsive to him, and he was unsatisfied with the progress we'd made on his request to have the ACT scores redacted from those 2 universities without the universities knowing why they're being pulled off. And so that's why he ended up speaking with me. But the conversation was interesting. And so we looked at our FERPA rules. We had our assistant attorney generals that are stationed in this office. We looked at our FERPA rules and also our contract with ACT. FERPA actually protects the child in this case. So if you think about concurrent enrollment, a student can enroll in concurrent enrollment in one of our LEAs. And in order to do that, usually it requires a parent permission on the course registration or class change form. So they can get into the class that way, but then they complete a registration form with the university, which does not require a parent signature. So they establish a relationship with the university. Once they do that, no matter their age, they're the ones that have FERPA. The parent actually doesn't have, and this was a good reminder for me, the parent doesn't have the authority to look at that student's grade, to interact on behalf of that student, again, regardless of the age of the student. So Dave Thomas, who is an AAG here, and he used to be an attorney at BYU, is the one who talked to me about this. One of the reasons for that is that you could have family circumstances where a parent might try to, I don't know, suppress a student's opportunities for various philosophical reasons or religious reasons, and the FERPA then allows the student could make that connection with higher ed and continue on without the knowledge of the parent. So anyway, just so you know, if you have, it was an unusual question, but it was one certainly worth considering. And just so you know, the FERPA allows that to happen. I think some of you, the way that you enroll students in the ACT and allow them to fill out that survey, you might already be involving parents, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're not required to have parent signature on the forms that the students submit that tells ACT where to send their ACT scores. And there's really no, we can find no liability or possible negative consequences that the student could incur because of that. So, okay. All right, this is a survey question. I've put additional time on here, so look at these responses closely. How would you prefer 8th grade students to be assessed in math? Would you like all students to take the 8th grade, the Math 8 test, realizing some of your students are enrolled in secondary Math 1? Would students enrolled in Math 8 take 8th grade math tests? Or that we offer integrated Math 1 and 8th grade math tests, and students take the test that's associated with the class they're enrolled in of those 2 options? So the majority of the LEAs who responded, again, it's a small sample size here, indicated that integrated Math 1 and 8th grade math tests be offered. They are course, 6th through 8th grade are course, actually 3rd through 8th grade are course-based. In our contract with Questar, being course-based, the contract includes 1 course per grade level. So the reason this survey is on here is my initial feeling from an LA perspective is I would like to have all my kids tested in 8th grade. And the integrated Math 1, those are my accelerated students in most cases in 8th grade. And so my thought was we would do that. We've begun work with Questar to amend the contract to include both content areas because the initial contract didn't look at it that way. There'll be a cost associated with that. So I wanted to get a feel. We've heard various perspectives. We've had some LEAs tell us that they don't want that just the 8th grade would be fine. These 8th graders that took Math 8 test in 7th grade, they don't have a problem that they're not tested in the 8th grade for math. We would have our data and statistics work to determine how you count them in accountability. So there's some complications there. So we've had some LEAs tell us that, and we've had others indicate strong feelings that they want the secondary Math 1 course-based test to be available in 8th grade. And so we're in a position right now, we're waiting to get the cost that would be associated with that. The other complication is secondary Math 1 would be part of the 9th grade ACT Aspire test. And so we would have to be, the agency then would have to be careful working with the two vendors that we don't expose students to the same items. So we have some item development duplication that'll happen potentially between Questar developing secondary Math 1 items, Pearson. So it's a little more complicated than what I would like. But again, I just want to get a feel. If those of you who might not have responded to this but have strong feelings one way or another would like to send that to me by email, call me, or visit with me, I'm open to any feedback that we get about this issue. We'll be making a decision about this as soon as we get the cost proposal back from Questar. All right, Emily, you got a question online? Okay. So the question is they'd like to have all their students tested, and they start to accelerate students as early as 2nd grade. The tests will be developed for all of those grades up through 8th grade will be developed in language arts, science, and math up through 8th grade. So it won't be a problem in those early grades. It'll just be assigning them the right code to access that test. But when we get to 8th grade, we will not have a 9th grade ELA test. And the science will be just up through 8th grade. The math is the one that we're contemplating making a change on, or an amendment to the contract to allow that. So, okay. Okay. Oh, so the thought or the discussion point is if we're offering integrated Math 1 and Math 8 in the 8th grade, and the associated benchmark and interim tests, especially because we know because we know Questar is going to offer the benchmark interims. That's written into the contract. We expect Pearson's contract will include at least benchmarks. Could have duplication on those. Those would be the same benchmarks because they're getting those out of the same item bank, which is ours that we've developed. So yeah, that's a great consideration as well. Okay. All right, let's see who our winner. All right, here we go. Is that an homage to the Jazz? Donovan Mitchell, he tweets, if you're a Twitter user, he tweets out before every game, "Let's go." I wonder if that's an homage to that. Here we go before our meeting. So thank you for participating in that. I've got just a couple of slides. One is to show you the dates for our upcoming year assessment directors and have some discussion about these dates. And then to try to update you on our communications plan. We're a little bit behind schedule in regards to the name of a new assessment. Okay, so that's I appreciate you sharing that information. We've got all kinds of configurations out there, and it sounds like we've got at least one school that has 8th graders taking secondary math too. The overall, when we ran statewide the numbers of students in different grades taking various tests, the numbers on that kind of scenario were so low, I don't think we could justify the cost of developing the assessments that go along with that. We'll have to work out some of the challenges with accountability individually on that. So Colin Powell's one of my favorite recent historical figures. I had hoped at one point he would run for more office than he did. I've heard him speak several times, and I really think highly of his judgment. I don't know that I agree with everything, obviously philosophically and politically, but he once said, "There's no secret to success. It's the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure." That certainly applies to my experience in life, both in work, in family, and personal endeavors. And I think it's true for us in our profession, and also communicating that to students who still think there's some kind of magic pill that some people got it and some didn't, and I didn't, so I'm not going to, no sense to try. So that's my quote for the month. Let's look at the next slide, which is going to be this proposed schedule for AD meetings. So looking at the past years, the July the third Thursday meeting, we've typically not held that because people are off on vacation and the participation is pretty low. So I expect, unless there's strong feelings with the group otherwise, we'll just cancel that one. When we get to October, if we stay on our traditional meeting time, that's during the fall break. With the introduction of 2 new assessments and the associated vendors with that, I hate to cancel that meeting, so I'm proposing that we have that meeting the previous Thursday on the 11th. One of my challenges is this room gets scheduled way in advance, so I don't have a room that I can hold our meeting in October. So one of my thoughts is there might be an LEA that would be willing to host us as assessment directors. So if you'll think about that, and if you're willing to host us, send me an email. Then as we go into December, that's another one that's different because last year we held it right before Christmas break, and some of you were on Christmas break. Our attendance was really minimal. So we could cancel that meeting, but again, with the challenges of introducing 2 new assessment systems and the vendors with that, I would encourage us to meet. So I'd like to have that on the 13th of December, which again is the Thursday prior to when we typically do. But again, I don't have, this building is fully scheduled. It's amazing how these rooms get filled up so quick. And so we would be looking to host off-site. We do have the public safety building that we can host at, but I think it's just better to host in an LEA if there's somebody who's willing to do that for us. And then we'll continue to broadcast it and make the meeting available online as well, and not force people to have to come. And then the rest of the dates are just the standard meeting times, the 3rd Thursday, which hopefully we've scheduled into the next 10 years so that we can have the right space for that, or have a space. Okay. All right, Emily, let's go to the next slide. No, I'm going to be done. This is my last slide. As you know, we've been working with a communications company. BWP is the name of that group. We've been renaming our assessments. Some of you have been contacted by them. They've had some feedback groups. They're in the process right now of developing what they call collateral, or I call them artifacts, flyer, brochures, short video testimonials that they're seeking from parents, administrators, and teachers about using statewide assessment. And talking about the things that are different and the same with our new assessment. The name has been selected. We've held off on that under the direction of this company to make a kind of a big kickoff. Again, June 7th is what we're shooting for that. And so these are updated dates. The collateral creation will go through June 7th. The video segments and testimonials might take a little bit longer. Social media campaign, and then our communications implementation will go through August. So we're still moving forward. It might not feel like that to you in the field, but we are making progress, and now we're shooting for June 7th. So are there questions for me that I might be able to address before I take a seat? And I think we turn it over to I don't know who's next. Al? Oh. So for those of you in the field, the question has to do with having tools for our teachers in 9th and 10th grade to help them with their writing instruction and getting feedback for their students, and whether there's discussion at the state level about working with Utah Compose to realign to the state writing standards in 9th and 10th grade. And I don't know, Kim, if you'd like to address that.
The crosswalk's been done for 4 years, so I'm not sure what you guys are looking at, because we've had that crosswalk and pretty much it actually aligns pretty well, because good writing is good writing. I mean, we haven't really had that many discussions about that, but the contract's going out for RFP this year or so, because the contract expires June 30th of 2019, so that's our next big contract. So one of many, the never-ending story. Yes. Do we want to have Greg go first? That's what I was asking them behind me, and they're like, they didn't know. So thanks, Hal.
Hey, assessment directors. It's good to be back. Oh, good, they remember me. Hi, so I'm here with Greg to just give you some little things we want you to be aware of that we've been working on student data privacy. So if you hear teachers mention any of these things, you're not like, what? Where did that come from? So this is mostly just kind of for your information. So for those of us who, for those of you who don't know us, so we oversee compliance with federal student privacy law, mostly FERPA, and I really like that Darren actually gave the very 100% answer when it came to issues with students and concurrent enrollment in universities. That's good that because you went to our AG and he also knew the right answer. So that's a confusing one. So well done. And also Utah laws as it relates to student data privacy, which ends up just hitting kind of everything with data. So we provide trainings, resource materials, and also investigate complaints and report violations to the board. So, well, nice to see Whitney didn't update that part of the slide. What does this have to do with ignore curriculum and put in assessment? Well, so our goal today is to let you know, like I said, what we've been working on, answer any questions you might have as it relates to your positions and privacy. But mostly, like I said, here's what we've been working on. So one of the big things relates to app vetting. Again, I don't know how much this will affect all of you, but one of the big things we constantly get asked about is different educational apps and websites. Some of them could, I imagine, be used for assessments that teachers maybe are signing up for without letting anybody know. And that can be problematic when you don't know where that data are going. So consequentially, we have been working with Learn Platform. How many of you are familiar with Learn Platform? Okay, see a handful of hands going up. Handful of hands. A parliament of owls. Okay, that's what the group noun is. Okay, anyway. So what the goal of this is we're trying to get several different LEAs together to review the privacy policies of these different apps, and then that will appear in the Learn platform. I'm not sure, we're still piloting right now. I hope something is going live for the next school year, but for those of you who use Learn platform, this should be something that will be appearing there fairly soon. There will be like a little badge that will say like privacy approved or pending or serious concerns. I'm not entirely sure what it will say. We're hoping, I mean, kind of the feedback we've gotten from LEAs is it would be really nice if we just knew, if we just kind of had that whitelist, so we knew what was good and what wasn't, and then we could just start using it instead of having to look into it. So we're hoping that that will, once we get it rolling, will be a big time saver for everyone. The other thing we've been talking about fairly recently as it comes to data leaving buildings is FERPA has what is called a recordation requirement. So when certain parties request or receive data, we are supposed to be recording locally. There should be a list of everywhere where that kid's data is going. There's a couple of little exceptions to ones you don't have to do. But that's kind of, I think, a really important transparency requirement, right? Like, how many of you do you feel like today, if a teacher came to your, a parent came to your district and said, I want to know every place you are sending my kids information? Yeah, exactly. How long would it take you to track that information down? Possibly, I mean, I feel like from the assessment director point of view, that probably wouldn't be too difficult, I would hope. Because again, like there's lots of contracts, like, I mean, if a kid's in 3rd grade, chances are something's being sent right now to Sage and to Dibbles. You could probably track that down really quickly. Our concern again comes with teachers and, you know, apps and websites they're signing up for without telling anybody. So this is something, if you just hear that phrase, recordation requirement, that's something we're looking at for this next year, trying to figure out ways to help schools get better at that. Because I think it's an important element of transparency and parents being involved in the relationship with schools. It's just them simply knowing like where the data are going. And then the other really big thing is, and Greg and I are actually finishing this up, hopefully finishing up our video part today, and then we'll start editing it together. So board rule requires that teachers, as a component of their relicensure starting this summer, have to take a course that is provided by the state in student data privacy. So we are working on that now, and that will be, like I said, available starting this summer. We've also been telling districts and charters that if they want to use this for other trainings, not just for relicensure, they're welcome to use those materials for that as well, or to take certain parts of it and then combine it with their own parts that they filmed. Robin, and actually she sent it to us, she did that with some of the other videos we've created. She filmed her own part where she did her best Dr. Evil impression. So that's what we wanted you to be aware of. Also, we are coming up with a guidebook that discusses, you know, kind of your one-stop shop for all data privacy concerns. And as I said before, since data privacy ends up hitting kind of everything that data has, an assessment ends up having a lot of data. Some of this might be useful for you. Also, I know some of you, you're our data manager as well, because people wear lots of hats in different areas. So this is another thing we're planning on having available this summer. And there is our team's contact information. Any questions we can answer? Anyone want to know where Ryan is? Make the guidebook into an iOS app. Thanks, Guy. Yeah. Well, yes, that is the big thing. We are going into it. We are building it to be ADA compliant, not building it and then realizing, oh no, we have to go back and make it ADA compliant. And would that? I mean, I don't know. Do people access these kinds of things in a phone app? Or is it just Guy who is retiring? Just get the Braille iPad. Okay. Thank you for your comments, Guy. Okay, and we'll resume. Let you go back to your regularly scheduled assessment directors meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so for test status and management stuff, just a real quick thing. Make sure you're checking your test status management little, your notifications. Remember, it's a two-step process. You have to you also have to check on them and process them as well, and just double check that. We've had a lot of questions about test invalidations, and I had slides, but they're not here, but I have the process if anybody is still wondering about the process. Remember that a parent who turns in an opt-out form can opt out even if the students completed all their tests. You still have to go in and invalidate the test, and then you also have to process that request as well. That's part of that test status management. Yes, Rachel. You still have to go in and invalidate the test. Yeah, you go in and just, it didn't exist. I know it sounds really red. And if there's a problem in the system with that, you may want to contact the help desk. If there's, if we have to reopen something, let us know, and we can help you with that. But yeah, nope, it's universal. Okay, much of their screen, yes. Invalidated. Contact the help desk because Robin can reset the test. So if you have any, because those are the good news ones, right? Somebody goes, oh, we opted out. Oh, nope, changed our mind. We want them to test. Remember that those you need to contact the help desk or contact Robin, because she can go in and click them, and it takes like 10 seconds. I mean, that's almost an instantaneous thing. Usually when I email her and say we've got a request, within an hour we have it. It's ready to go. It's been reset and ready to go, and it just automatically just shows back up like magic. It's like an amazing thing. So a couple things really quick. Oh yes, go ahead. You have to invalidate in Tide and on, yeah, you have to do both. Yeah. Yep, you have to do it all, I think. And it works in Tide. I mean, I don't know, just in Tide. Yeah, it's not a data gateway, right? Emily? Yes, invalidate and set your code in Tide, which is worth saying. If you don't get your code in Tide, you have to get it from, you have to go to the data gateway. Does that help? Okay. Yeah, well, Emily Berry, well, either one of us can answer the invalidation, and when it comes to both of us do it. So we answer, and I had detailed instructions, but they aren't in the slide for some reason. So real quick reminder, have you registered? I've had a few questions. We've added in, by the way, the trainings for the Pearson system as well for Utah Aspire Plus. I know this is really small to read, guys. Just remember that August 2nd is when the Nextera IT training is going to be offered. It's a webinar. We are asking you to register for it in Midas, though. You might as well get your credit for those of you with Cactus IDs. And then September 12th and 13th will be both. In the morning, it will be the Nextera system, and in the afternoon, it will be the Pearson system, so that you don't have to come and go, and they're at the same locations. You'll be on your own for lunch, and then we'll resume and do the two systems. They have different Midas course codes. Please go in and register. It's important for you to note that we've limited this to 75 participants, if you have an issue, you need to call us right away, and it's only for one person plus another person. Now, our regional directors from News and Q's and SESE, you guys are absolutely welcome, and we would love to have you come. So spread the word. I mean, I'll see you later for the UTIP thing, but we would really like everyone to be able to be there. And these are the dates we already have scheduled with locations. They're pretty much at the same place. We're going to be at the Sevier School District in Richfield for the second day, and Weaver Innovations for the first day. And that's pretty much the training. So please, please, please remind everybody. I've had people email me and say, okay, so I'm the IT person or I'm the assessment director. Which one should I attend? You need to attend all of them because this year it's all new systems. This is not the year to pick and choose. And we totally understand the fact that some of you are a little more advanced than others, but there's a lot of little nuances that you're going to find in there. So it's really important this year. We're all starting over. So please attend and register. The new assessment director trainings are on August 1st and January 16th. We already have them on the books. If you're a new assessment director or you have new people in your office who are helping you, it's really important that they come. This is a more high level review. We go over every assessment. So we talk about KEEP, we talk about DIBBLS, we talk about DLM, we talk about UAL, we talk about, we'll talk about Nextera, we'll talk about Pearson, we'll talk about all the new systems. And it's a pretty, and you're welcome if you're unsure about something, we'll get the agenda posted for you as soon as we can so that you can come and go. If there's a system that you're like, you know what, I'd like to come get a refresher, it would be ideal for you to be there. Another thing is we did send out a bunch of surveys, and so we wanted to just give you a heads up on what we're working really hard about on the public portals. First of all, between the two main systems, we are trying to make the public portals look as similar as possible. Remember, there's two different companies, but the information and the way that they're designed are going to be very similar to make it simpler for you and for teachers to, you know, especially if you're in a 7-9 junior high school. I taught 7th and 9th grade. I would be dealing with two testing systems and two portals. We're trying to do that. We're working really hard to keep common assessment vocabulary and acronyms the same so that, you know, like if it was a TAM before, it's still going to be a test administration TAM this time. We are going to make sure that our training materials have lots of screenshots. One of the goals is to have some little video clip examples for, you know, how do you do this that are like 5 minutes long. We're going to be offering some checklists and some simplified one-page quick reference sheets that you can just go in and say, are you ready to test? Here's your little check mark. And then we will have training tests for the Nextera system. It's called the question sampler. So what it will be is basically you can go in and see how the questions work. Same thing as our previous training test. Any questions online, Emily? Utah, at this point in time, that's still up in the air. We're guessing yes. The date, we're still working out the date. We're hoping to do it at the exact same date. That's our goal, but there's a few little things Rebecca can add to it, but that's our goal. Our goal is to definitely do it in January. So for those of you doing calendars, you might want to just keep that day, that entire day free for those of you who are doing Utah Inspire Plus, just in case. Okay, Emily.
We're going to talk about a few things. I don't have a slide in here on this, but somebody asked about 6-8 science not reporting back. I'm waiting on an answer from AIR on that one. As soon as I know why we're not getting at least completion reports, I'll let you know what's happening. So, just a reminder of who to contact when things are missing. Your SIS system, check with your UTREX people. Most of the time, things can get resolved with them first. And I'm just going to direct you back to them anyways. But after you've checked with them, then give me a call. We'll figure out what's happening. We're getting a lot of questions on specifically 12th graders taking SAGE. SAGE is course-based, so if the student is enrolled in the course, they're expected to test it. 11th graders are the exception. Some of the LEAs have started asking me to add 11th graders back into testing because some schools want to test and others don't. Just remember that SAGE 11th graders are pulled out of accountability, so you don't have to worry about coding them. If you want to test them, you can. If you don't, they're fine. And then there's been a lot of questions about CTE courses. If they're enrolled in that, they have to take the SAGE test as well. And then again, a lot of questions, it's still on the Kahoot, but 9-10 writing, it's still showing, but you can't access the test, and then you don't have to special code the ones that were not taken. Special codes training, we love talking about this. This is the link to the PowerPoints, the training video that's on the website. Everything that you need is there. If you have any questions, give me a call, email me, whatever it is you need to do, we'll figure it out. And then again, 11th graders do not need special codes. They're not going to be counted. A few reminders that once your LEA has completed your SAGE testing window, you have to go into the Data Gateway Special Codes tool and hit that SAGE Complete button. And then from there, you're going to start working on your special codes. Ideally, you're working on them now, but keep in mind that data is going to constantly change through the collection of all the files that we get. So we're going to get the AR file of all the tests that are completed. We have to get the AR special codes file, and then you guys have to submit your final Utrex data. All your data is going to constantly change through that process. So don't hit that certify codes until after the Utrex file, because that's going to change things still. But you have to certify your codes by July 13th. And all of that information is in that SAGE Special Codes training video. We good there? We're rolling. DLM UA. The testing window closes on June 8th. Your UA spreadsheets have been uploaded to your UA download folder. There's been a lot of questions on that. And then you need to upload them back to your UA upload folder. And then you set your special codes for UA in the participation code column. The DLM special codes, you have to complete your first contact survey before you can set those. But once that's been done, you can go to your test management tab, click on the test session, scroll to the right, and set the code that you need to set. You good there, Trace? I practiced last night. And then in the email that Amy sent out with the slides, I attached the special codes for DLM UA because it was really hard to make ADA compliant. So, okay, it's a second email. It was also sent in last week's AD memo. So there's several places that you should be able to find that spreadsheet. Okay. So if you have DLM students that are showing up, then you're probably going to want to change your 1% flags to get them into SAGE so that they can test in SAGE. And then the test, I don't know, DLM, does it automatically report back to us even if it's been generated? Because in SAGE, if a test has been generated, they have to have a special code to explain the non. Yeah.
Just email me. But in order for a student to get sent to DLM, you have that 1% flag, right? That checkbox, 1% alternate assessment in your SIS system. Okay, it doesn't matter what course a student is enrolled in. If that box is marked, they get sent to DLM and they don't get to SAGE, right? So if you have students that are in DLM that shouldn't be, right, and they're not going to generate a test, you're going to end up with a student that's a non-participant, right, if they should be taking SAGE. So you've got to really check that box. And as soon as you uncheck that 1% box, they'll head back to SAGE. They'll enroll back in SAGE, okay? So if you have questions or concerns around that, or you've got a student that may have started testing and shouldn't have tested, please reach out to Emily and I.
And then, so WIDA stuff, our validation is going to start today. You should have received your score reports on the 11th. If you have anything that you need us to look into or change, fix, whatever, you just contact me as soon as possible so that I can put that into the validation. I have to have that reported back by June 18th. This one's not mine. For this scores reporting and data gateway.
The question is whether the score reports will be uploaded into Data Gateway. They're different than the ones we receive right now from them, but they're the, I don't know who makes them, but they indicate whether the student met their target or not for the year, and their individual student report.
So once I submit the final folder or the changes back to WIDA June 18th, they'll send us back a final data file, and as soon as that happens, then I'll be able to post it. Then the process is to upload it to the data gateway. Probably, I believe our file comes back in July. Does that sound right? July 7th is when we should get our file back. It kind of falls in the midst of getting all the other data folders back, so we just start. Yep. The plan is still to put it on the data gateway. You should still be able to get your score report pages, reports that typically you're able to get. And I know there was some problems with the 2017 data going to Aspire, and they're fixing that. And as soon as they fix that, then they'll know what to fix for the 18 data. We're anticipating the WIDA data into Data Gateway by September.
Okay. Couple things I just wanted to share with you on what's happening. So Darren brought this up at the beginning, but the testing ethics policy is in the process to go before the committee in June, hopefully approved, and then move to the full board in August and be ready for you in August to be able to train your personnel. And also the updated testing schedule for next year has been posted. I have the links here. One is just to the website page, and then the other is to the actual document. I also, up front here, if you want a hard copy of that schedule, I have a few here if you're in the building. Then one other thing I wanted to, I guess, mention, excuse me, is we've had, in looking at testing this past year, this year, man, it's not that emotional. We've had about 42,000 tests administered outside of the windows that were shared with us in the LEA testing plans. So we just wanted to remind you and bring to your awareness to make sure that you're sticking with those windows. As Darren also brought up, that 8-week window in the spring, it's kind of a, depending on when your schools or your district get out of school, that's how that 8-week window is determined. I did want to kind of ask you, and you could email me if you have any comments about this question, but one thing we're talking with Questar about is that they have the ability in their system to kind of lock down the testing window for your district. And so rather than us saying, well, go in and you try and figure out when your testing window should be, you would share your dates with us in the LEA testing plan in September. We would share that with Questar, and then that 8-week window would be put into their system so that that's when they could access it. I guess my question to you is that we're kind of leaning towards that because it kind of takes away the hassle for you to try and figure that all out, and it would just, that's how the system would go. If you had any circumstances where something came up for whatever reason and you needed to extend somewhere, Questar has said it's easy enough just to, you could let us know, we would talk to Questar, and they would open it up to extend it for a certain amount of time as needed. Yeah, Sherry. Okay, good feedback. And this, and something I didn't mention, this would be for the spring window only, is what I'm talking about here, not any kind of fall, mid-year kind of summative testing, but that's something good to keep in mind. Thank you. And if you have any other feedback, I could take it now, or if you want to just email me some thoughts about that. Oh, okay. Kim's just saying there were 11 LEAs that had students testing outside their windows. Okay. If there aren't any questions, we'll move to Rebecca sharing high school assessment information.
Hi. So the title on these slides has now expanded. It's gone beyond ACT, and now it's high school assessment. So we're going to talk about both ACT items and our new Utah Aspire Plus items. Thankfully, Darren did a masterful job at covering a lot of the information. So when we get to some of those sections, there may be a little bit of additional detail, but not much. So. Oops. Things we're going to talk about, function of the ACT. I sent out a survey and got some interesting feedback back. How it works in accountability, Utah Aspire Plus timeline. So one of the questions that has come up is what does this look like as far as time for development and putting it out? Some testing options that Darren talked about, and then a summary of the feedback that I got on questions about what are people most concerned about on the new assessment. So let's talk about the function of the ACT. So this question was one of the questions that I asked on our post-ACT administration survey and got an interesting response. 60% of the respondents said that, well, we'll hit that. So it is not a summative end of course assessment. It is not a measure of specific course outcomes. So I can't look at my ACT data and say, oh, my biology students did this. And it is not an academic course proficiency measure for our accountability. But what it is, it's an end of level assessment. And what it does is it looks at the likelihood of student success in a first year or an entry-level college class, which is why it measures things like critical thinking skills, items that are those deep and transferable skills from course to course. And the part where people were confused is that this is part of our college and career readiness indicator as opposed to the academic indicator. So it's a different indicator for your school grading. So then the next question is, so how does that work? What does that look like? Within your accountability, you've got points that are allotted to different categories. One of those categories is the college and career readiness category, or post-secondary readiness. It makes up about a third of your points, and it includes graduation rates, access to advanced level coursework, so students that are participating in AP, IB, CE, or CTE pathways courses, and the ACT. On the ACT, it's looking at the percentage of students who obtain an 18 or higher. Question? So question is, does this include the 11th grade test, or is it any score? So this is, has it been finalized yet, Darren? Okay, so as of potentially June 7th, this will be only the 11th grade administration. So we'll update if that's different after that meeting. Any questions on this before we continue on? So just to recap, ACT is not an end of course measure. It's an end of level measure, and it's used in the college and career readiness indicator. So let's talk about Utah Aspire Plus. So on this development, what does it look like? How long is it going to take us to get information? We have some of those same questions, so don't feel left out. Here is a basic stepping stone of what we're anticipating as far as the schedule goes. So during this month, we're working on finalizing contract items, looking at blueprint in a draft. By July, that's our date for our final blueprint. So some of the questions that you have about what is this going to look like, we can't answer yet because we don't know. August and September, there will be trainings. In August, I'll be working on doing a training similar to the one that I did with the ACT, which is how to use core instruction to prepare students for the assessment. And that's also the same kind of training I want to do for the new 9th, 10th grade assessment. And then in September, Pearson will be here to do an overview of what does the assessment look like, and all of the information where you can ask questions directly from Pearson. In December, we've got our scoring maps, we're working on technical items. January, more trainings, and this is the second version with Pearson that we're working on setting up, hopefully back to back with the next era training, so that Pearson can be here to talk about all of the technical components of how to actually run TestNav and Pearson Access Next and the things that are required for their platform. February, Pearson Access Next goes live. Those of you who have administered the ACT will be familiar with Pearson Access Next. If you haven't, this will be your first opportunity to play with Pearson Access Next. All the manuals will be available, and then the testing window is March 25th through May 17th. And as we looked at all of the survey feedback on when should this testing window be, what would be most useful, the bulk of the answers were April. So those of you who said April, you're in luck because April's in the middle. Those of you who wanted earlier tended to be at the end of March. And those of you who wanted June, sorry, you're out of luck. We needed to have the testing window go during the time when schools would be in session. Questions on timeline items? Okay. So options for administration. This is what Darren was talking about earlier. So LEAs can either do the whole battery, or you can choose to do it by subject area, and that will be an LEA decision. We'll know more about the details on that as we go. Here are some ideas, though, when people have asked questions, well, how might we want to do that? One idea would be to kind of bridge between the course taking assessment pattern that you do in 8th grade to have it done deliver it by course in 9th grade, meaning take the math section during math class, the language arts section during your language arts class, science section during science class, and then do it as a battery in high school, in 10th grade. So for those of you who have 9th grades in a high school, you could just do the whole battery. For those of you who have 9th grades in a junior high, it might make more sense to do it just by class period. Up to you, but that was an idea. And then you have that 8-week testing window where you can choose whatever will work the best for your LEA. Question? When will we have to make the decision is the question. By your September testing plan. September 15th. Yep. So I had a survey that I put out. Just one of the questions on the bottom of the survey about the testing window was, what were you most concerned about? But before we go, we have got a question. Since it is time, do we know how long it will take? We will once the blueprints are finalized. So for now, you can guess that it will be approximately the same length as an ACT, but we won't know that for sure until after the blueprints are completed. Oh, did it skip my results? It did. Sad. And now you know that there is a Name That Tune. So this had a graphic on there, and I don't know why it's not showing up, but it was a graphic of what people were most concerned about with this new assessment. And the number one concern is, what does it look like? What does the blueprint look like? The second one was, how do we talk with our teachers about this assessment? How do we help them to know what the purpose is? And the third one had to do with technology. So I took all of the responses and coded them, and they fit into 6 main categories. And those were the top 3. But the top one of what does this test look like was the largest response by far. And so to address those concerns, as soon as we know what the test blueprint will look like, we'll be sure to put that information out. I'll put together some one-pagers that you can share with your teachers, with your staff, with your parents. Also, we had a suggestion from Rob about, could I put together a PowerPoint or something that you guys could use to help your teachers and your test administrators and other people know what this test looks like. And I'm going to work on doing that, so that there's kind of an overview of, this is what the test will look like, this is how it relates to what you're teaching in the core, so that they can make that connection. Because one of the concerns is, since this is no longer an end of course assessment, what do we do with it? And so trying to help people to shift that mindset a little bit to, this is your end of level. There's still end of course measures you can use. If the benchmarks get funded, that's a good one. But to help people understand that transition and what the purpose of this assessment is as compared to what they have used previously. So know that that's forthcoming. As far as the technology goes, there will be things for you guys to do trial runs of your technology, kind of like with ACT, and where you can go through and figure out how is this going to work. However, since previous SAGE testing has been done online as well, it shouldn't represent too much of a change from that with the flexibility in the testing windows. See if now it shows up. Nope. Okay, you only get one today. And this has to do with the theme of generally bringing in a whole bunch of new information right at the end of the year, right in time for school to get out, right in time for the start of the next year. And this was my son's suggestion. Anybody? What is, say it out loud. Luke Bryan, the name of the song. Does anybody know? It starts with, I believe most people are good. Yes. Way to go, Tara Lynn and John online. You guys rocked it. So, I don't do country either, but I actually like this song. My son will play this one. So, thematic connection is just keep the underlying assumption that most people, including assessment people, are good. And we actually want to make your life a little bit easier as we can. So that's that. As always, if you have questions. For the ACT itself. So you'll get your student profile reports and your school level reports. What you do with that to get it back to your teachers, from there you won't get any additional items broken down by teacher from ACT. Does that answer your question? For teachers to use. So the question is, what might be appropriate for teachers to use out of the ACT data that you receive? Okay. Okay, so the question is, what do you report back to teachers? And I'm actually working on some one-pagers to go over. Here are tools you can use for your teachers. Here are things that they can do with those data. But what you're looking at as far as teachers go is, how are your students using critical thinking? How are they using the reading comprehension skills, things like that. And so those are the items that they're looking at, are those deeper skills. Are they developing the things that they need to do? Email me and I'll provide some guidance. It's not as useful broken down into tiny components because there's not enough items on each component. But there are some good things you can do. As a matter of fact, on ACT's webpage, they have some guides for teachers and score reports. But email me and I will email you some more information. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. As always, email me with suggestions, questions, things you have. So thanks. So question is, how does this test prepare students who are not going into courses that require, or employment that requires a bachelor's degree or higher? And the answer to that is that these skills are transferable through careers as well, and they're desired by employers. They are required at technical schools, they're required in community college settings. So these items are applicable because of the skill focus that's on there. Employers want critical thinking. They want problem solving. So when you look at crosswalks between what does college and career readiness actually look like, what things truly indicate college and career readiness, those are the skill level items are the things that make the difference. So, okay, anything else? So Guy, that's your answer. Okay, I will hand it over.
Okay, I think I am the last couple of slides. So DIBELS, just a reminder that we are right in the middle of the DIBELS end of year testing window for benchmarking for DIBELS. The test window goes until June 15th. You have until June 30th to enter the data. If you're using Amplify, it's entered already. If you're a DMG customer, you have until June 30th to submit that data to us here at the state. In your SIS system, you do still need to mark any special codes for interventions, special codes as well as the yes/no for intervention. That still needs to be marked in your SIS system. And any late data will cause issues with UTREX rolling over, so that's a really hard deadline, that June 30th, to make sure all DIBELS data is entered by that point. Tracy. Oh, thank you. So Tracy just reminded me, if you have students that are participating in DIBELS alternate assessments, like the TOSREC or the DIBELS alt, that data also would be entered in the SIS system. So thanks, Tracy. Any questions about DIBELS? So the next thing is, as Darren mentioned, with the DIBELS vendors applications are open. They opened on May 1st. We actually have 95 people who have responded already out of the 141-ish LEAs. So we're well on our way. If you have not responded yet, communicate with your literacy director to determine who's going to be determining which vendor you are going to be using for the 18-19 school year. So remember that all schools in the LEA must use the same vendor, and even if you're staying with the same vendor, you have to fill out the application each year. So just a reminder, if you haven't filled that out yet, communicate with literacy directors about who in your LEA will fill that application out. If you need us to resend the link, you can email myself or Heather. I think her emails will be up on the next slide. That is due by June 15th. And within the next couple of weeks, if you haven't filled that out, we'll be emailing and asking people to fill that out again. And then finally with KEEP, as Darren mentioned, we've had a rocky road with getting stuff started with data entry. We're hopeful that, and things have been moving smoothly for us. So if you have questions or concerns or issues with anything with either it's entering data, we've had people that have asked about some scoring things, particularly with the writing and following up with the rubrics for writing. If you have questions about anything KEEP related, you're welcome to email anyone on our team. The KEEP window, again, is the last 4 weeks of school, so most people are within that window right now in testing. This data is also entered by June 15th. So there's a little bit of confusion with the DIBELS and the data and for KEEP. So DIBELS, the last day of the testing window is June 15th. The data has to be entered by June 30th. For KEEP, the data has to be entered by June 15th. So if you just aim for that June 15th date, that's great. Just keep everything simple. If the assessors are having difficulty getting into the data gateway, they can contact you, assessment directors, or if there's still questions. I know we had a few people contact us yesterday about having issues with teachers having access. We just walked them through how to grant assessment user rights to the teachers to be able to input that data. If you have questions on KEEP, you can see emails down here. Liz Williams, Heather Gross is Language Arts, or Whitney Barlow is Math, if you have questions on KEEP, and Tracy. Yes, okay, so if you have students that are participating in KEEP Alt, that one was not up for a couple of days when the other data entry was available, but that is available now. So if you have teachers that are those 1% students that participate in KEEP Alternate, that's ready to go. It looks really similar. Actually, it looks exactly the same as the beginning of the year. It's the same assessment. It's observational. The teachers can observe those students anytime during that the last 4-week window for the KEEP Alt. Yes. Okay, so plan for results for KEEP. We are doing standard setting on June 21st. So I actually just emailed a couple of you today to participate with standard setting for the exit data on June 21st. And then at that point, we'll probably have a couple of weeks that we need to make sure we go back through and recode all of our system to have that ready to go. I think we're hoping August, September, that things should be standard set, everything recoded to have those, at least the scores and the proficiency levels. And then we're good to go. So starting at the beginning of the year for the KEEP entry, we should have that ready to go. Our timeline right now is ready for the year-round schools in July to be ready to do data entry online like we have for the exit with if they want to just do paper pencil, they can still do paper pencil. But if they want to do the administration online, our goal right now is to have that done well before, by the end of June is when we're hoping, so we can test and make sure things are working properly for mid-July before year-round school. So start with the KEEP entry. But that should be ready to go, and the scoring is updated with the proficiency levels and standards set for the entry. So when that starts up in the fall, that should be ready to go. We're working right now with our programmers on reports so that there are individual student reports as well as teacher, school, and LEA reports available for the KEEP entry data. That should be what they're working on it right now. So those should be ready to go as soon as you're entering data for the entry for KEEP. As far as exit, standard settings June 21st, and then we'll have a month or two after that we should have everything finalized. Other questions on KEEP? Okay. And then I think this is our last slide. We are doing science 6, 7, 8 standard setting in September. So September 11th, 12th, 13th. We are down, or actually we're at the Hotel RL, so we're here in Salt Lake. And this meeting, we need content people, but we also need curriculum and superintendents and lots of a variety of people to be involved with science standard setting. So it's not mandatory, but we like a wide range of participants when it comes to standard setting, particularly for our summative assessments like SAGE. So if you have people that are interested, not only content people, but also curriculum or assessment people that would be interested in participating in the science standard setting, that is September 11th, 12th, 13th here in Salt Lake at the Hotel RL. If you're interested in participating on that committee and being part of that standard setting, email Scott Ross Kelly. His email is the very last line there at the bottom. He's our science assessment specialist. He's not here today because they're actually writing PLDs today, so they're getting those ready to go, so we have those PLDs for standard setting. But if you have questions or have people that you would be interested in participating in that science standard setting, please let Scott know. Questions on that? One other reminder, because we've had several questions come in with the science. I know we had a question earlier, but as far as when they're not getting the reports. So Emily mentioned the reports of the who's completed or not, the completion reports. We're working on that, but students will not see a score until October, November. We do standard setting in September, so you won't see actual scores until later this fall. Yeah, Teresa. So Emily, have you heard back on test completion reports yet or not yet? Nope, not yet. So that's something, I think as soon as we hear that, maybe we can send that out in an assessment director's note that we know here's we have a solution for getting the reports or a timeline at least for when those completion reports will be ready for you. Other questions, science or other? Okay. I don't know, Darren, do we have anything else? I think that's it. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you all in June. We know we have lots to talk about in June. Oh, something online. The 6 through 8 jelly bean screen. Do you know this? Oh. Okay, so the jelly bean screen, that's the completions report. So the problem with that screen is related to the completion report problem. So when the completion reports are fixed, then that jelly bean screen should be fixed as well. Sounds like a fun screen. All right, thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate you being here, and the people online, we appreciate it. If you have questions, please let us know. Thank you.